Tim, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Happy to be with you again, Sean.
Well, so this week we celebrated 100 days in office. You were there during the first term. I've reflected a lot about what I think is different between this term and the first. I actually had a good conversation with the president about it. What are your views on what's different between now and then?
I think really the recognition that there are going to be obstacles and opponents, within the very bureaucracy of the federal government. I think the first time through that was expected, of course, but I think when faced with the entrenched bureaucracy that is in all of these different federal agencies spread across millions of federal employees, I think maybe the depth of, and that's what I think of when I think of the deep state. Frankly, when people talk about the deep state, I think about the bureaucracy that exists across all presidents. The federal government, people who work in these bureaucracies, they believe that they are eternal and that presidents come and go and they don't have to pay attention really to what the president says, especially if it's one they don't agree with politically. They can just forge ahead doing what they want to do, not what the administration that was elected by the people wants to do, but what the federal bureaucracy wants to do. And I think the second time through, they were much better prepared for facing that onslaught of opposition that they knew they were going to get from the federal bureaucracy. And they dove right in, unhesitatingly and really tore into it. And I think the energy with which they have attacked these first 100 days is also a difference. I think have been massive accomplishments. Just look at what's been happening on the border and think about what Joe Biden was doing in his first 100 days. What was he doing? He was throwing open the gates of the country and basically making it so that we had no border. That's what he was doing in the first 100 days. And Donald Trump has reversed that almost completely. It really has been amazing to watch.
Yeah, on a number of fronts. And it's interesting to me, I always say that the people are one of the big differences. It's like who got brought in, who got kept out. And I think one of the things that I recognize is it is a much more cohesive team, not just at the senior White House staff level, but also at the cabinet level, right? And you even think about your former boss, Sonny Perdue, the Secretary of Agriculture. Like Trump didn't really know him. And this time, Secretary of Agriculture is Brooke Rollins. And meaning, and there's nothing I gotta say, as somebody who, was the first press secretary in Trump 1 to see Caroline Leavitt now, like I have no problem admitting that like she has a much, I think, greater relationship than I did. And I think the relationships that the senior staff has and the cabinet has with him is much more familiar, and that leads to a greater sense of cohesion and teamwork. I mean, you're a team sports guy. I think you can have good players, but if you don't have that sense of team, then that actually, sometimes you can have great players, they don't play well together, and the results speak for themselves. I think part of the reason that Trump's having the successes that he's having is because his people feel a much more sense of purpose and mission than maybe we did the first time.
I think that's fair to say. And I do come from a team sports background, and it is great to have talented players. Everybody wants to have talented players. But a lot of times people say, yeah, but how's the clubhouse or how's the locker room? That means basically, yeah, how do your great players, how do they all get along? Do they complement each other? Do they let each other play to their strength and not get bent out of shape if one player gets a little bit more attention on a certain day than other players? And I think that's what he's got. And I do want to say, Brooke Rollins is a great pick for Agriculture Secretary, and she's doing a great job. But Sonny Perdue was really, I mean, he was the Secretary of Agriculture from Central Casting. I mean, it was really great to work for him. And I think Brooke Rollins is doing a fantastic job. And I think that Caroline Leavitt is another one who's doing great. And I worked with her on the campaign. And I think it really does of course, it all starts with the president, but closest to him, Susie Wiles as chief of staff was just a masterful pick. I saw her in action for 4 months. I moved down to West Palm Beach at the end of the campaign, and Susie really is the glue that holds everything together. She gives the president the straight, honest truth about what's happening, what she thinks politically. I think really she leads. It's very calm. It's very steady. It's very grown-up leadership in the White House, and I think she's doing a masterful job. And I think it all starts from there.
I do think, and I use this analogy a lot, and again, you're a great guy to ask about this because of your background in sports, is when you play a team, like I remember growing up, like if we were playing soccer, we play a team and then later in the schedule, we'd play them again. And the coach would come in and say, okay, guys, remember when you played them the first time, they played to the right side a lot. And this is where we've strengthened our defense. And what you kind of did after action reports and analysis and kind of watch the tape, if you will, I think it can't be overstated how important the 4 years out of office have been to the success of the second term, because it's like watching the tape in sports. He's been able to go back and say, okay, if I get another chance, I mean, you brought this up at the beginning in terms of the resistance. How do I tackle the deep state? Well, I know they're going to try to do this. I'll go this way around them. I think that part of the thing about Doge is that the deep state has been dismantled because for a long time they felt empowered to attack him. And one of the things that they've done through Doge is put these guys back on their heels, Tim, and be like, hey,
Yeah.
better be careful because he's going to take they came in every term, not just Trump, every president saying, beating their chest, we are the deep state. We will beat you back. But I think that what Doge has done to them is it's almost like taking it's a preemptive strike where they're like, guys, you want to come at us? We'll come right back at you and we will take you guys out.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think they experienced what it was the first time, and the second time they just said, "Okay, we're ready for you guys, and we're just going to steamroll through, and we're going to come at you with such force and such determination, and they're not going to be deterred." You know, when anonymous federal employees go running to the Washington Post and complain about this or that, the administration, yes, it's an annoyance, and you don't want stories like that written in the Washington Post. But at the end of the day, they don't care because they're there. They already look. I see what the media is doing. They also knew what the media was going to do. And of course, they're doing it. The media and the deep state and the Democrats were not really, frankly, they were not going to accept the results of the November 2024 election where Donald Trump was returned to the White House. Because if you watch, they are rerunning the same arguments that were decided last November. The voters spoke. Take immigration, for example. I'll mention that again. The voters of America, the United States of America, they told everyone, we agree with Trump on illegal immigration. We want him to fix the border and stop the flood of illegal aliens into this country. And so Trump has set about doing just exactly that. And what's happening? The Democrats and the media and the deep state are fighting tooth and nail for every single illegal alien who is being deported. Every single one. This question has been decided. They just haven't gotten the message. Donald Trump is doing exactly what he was sent to Washington again to do. And the deep state, the media, and the Democrats don't like it. But again, to quote the great Barack Obama, elections have consequences. And Trump won.
Yeah. You mentioned Sonny Perdue, your former boss there, the Secretary of Agriculture in Brooke Rollins. It's interesting to me. I spoke to a group of pork producers several weeks ago now. We were talking about the tariffs. And they were like, hey, we're willing to be with the president because in the long term, if he can get some of these deals together, it's going to benefit us. And I don't think that most people who cover politics or who are pundits or whatever appreciate, I think, the resilience of some of our farmers and ranchers when it comes to the desire to fight for the greater good, which is greater market access. Because like our pork, our ag products, that the other, whether it's meat or fruits and vegetables, have such a hard time getting market access into places around the world that I just don't think that the media understands the resolve and the resilience that these folks have and are willing to stick with Donald Trump. Because I was surprised, to be blunt, when I was talking to them about, how do you feel about the tariffs? Like, well, we don't like them because it's making our job harder, but we get what he's fighting for and we're willing to stick with him.
Yeah, and we saw that the first time in the first administration. And you can go from coast to coast, from northeast to southwest and northwest to southeast. You are not going to find, as a group, a greater group of patriotic Americans than you find among the people who work in agriculture and American farmers. You're just not going to do it. They are freedom-loving, God-fearing, God bless America type patriots. They absolutely love America, and they're in it for the long game. They understand what's good to fight for, where the results may not be seen for months or years. We know that. And regarding the media, I know the media is always shocked when rural America stands with President Trump, and it always amuses me when the New York Times or someone like that, very close to an election, will parachute a reporter into Iowa or someplace and go out and interview farmers and come back. It's like an anthropological experiment from the New York Times. Every time they send somebody out on some sort of safari to the wilds of Iowa or Oklahoma or someplace like that, and then they report back to the Ivy League people like, you won't believe this, but the farmers are still with him. It's unbelievable to watch. It's so great. They clown themselves by going out and doing that. And they don't even know it.
They think by going to the Iowa State Fair that's
right. Oh yeah. We saw a sculpture made of butter. That's right. Like the report. I mean, come on, guys.
Well, it's funny. After the 2016 election, I've told this story before, but we were sitting. Another campaign staffer and I went and met with some of the folks at NBC News in Manhattan. And they said to us, we missed it. We didn't fully appreciate or recognize these so-called Trump voters that live, in their words, not mine, flyover country. And they were like, their answer was, we're going to have pop-up bureaus. They said, we just need more people, because the idea is that, like, again, they treated people like they were farm animals. They were like, oh, well, we'll go out and pet them and we'll visit with them. And then we'll come back to New York but like,
oh yeah. They're going to have a pop-up bureau. That's great. So let's say, they're going to send, NBC News is going to send some kid who's 26 years old, 27 years old from Dartmouth or wherever he went to college. And he's going to go out to Iowa, and he's going to get the pulse of the community. Come on. That's a joke. That's a joke. A pop-up bureau. The fact that they call that's insulting. It's unbelievable.
You mentioned that, I want to approach this from the sense of a communicator, because I had this conversation with Kalen Dorr at the White House earlier this week.
Another good friend of mine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I said to Kalen, you're never going to keep up with Donald Trump, right? That's just okay. But when the 100th day anniversary came up, Kalen sent me this document ahead of it, and it was 23 pages of all the promises made, promises kept of Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, so understanding that you're not going to, like, you can't, Trump just keeps going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. But I said, when I got this document that you sent me, Kalen, I started to page through it, and I was like, wow, I forgot that. I forgot he did that. I forgot he followed up on that. And so I was trying to figure out what's the way as a communicator that I said, do you guys feel like sometimes things are left on the cutting room floor? Like, he does all this stuff, and you realize, gosh, we never got credit, if you will, or acknowledgement, or sold, however you want to frame it. So many of these things that he's done to fulfill the promises to the voters that he made to them. And I'm sort of like, one of Kalen's answers was sort of, we need to come back to some degree. Like, in other words, hey, we'll have to figure out how to re-amplify some of these things, because there just wasn't time in the day. And I thought, well, it is an interesting challenge as a communicator.
It is an interesting challenge, because there have been a lot of, on the campaign trail during the course of a year or so, when you're out there, you make a lot of promises, and I'm sure the White House is keeping track of all of those. And in the daily news cycle, when you have the national news media searching for and finding their daily outrage, I mean, it's hard to actually get your good news across, because, the NBCs and CNNs of the world are not going to want to report that, oh, look at this, the president fulfilled another promise that he made on the campaign trail. They're not going to want to broadcast your good news to the American people, because that's not their mission. Their mission is to spread division and broadcast bad news, and then run polls on the bad news and say, see, we told you so, right? That's what they do. It's a negative information loop. It's a negative information.
So I brought this up earlier in the week, that the Media Research Center came out with this, 92% of all the media is negative. Now, wonder his poll numbers are where they are. And I felt like that it's subliminal, right? So the idea is, you yourself, I've always said that most issues are visceral. They're gut issues, right? So you don't need a poll to tell you the economy is going well or not. From going to the grocery store, or how much money you're saving or not. And yet, but it's like, it almost like the media's goal is to cast doubt on you.
Of course.
So that you're walking around going, God, I like these policies. Things are going well. But this is weird, because I'm reading this thing in the New York Times or on NBC saying how bad this guy is. And it's just, I keep getting a kick out of the fact that it does. You use the word loop, and I think that's absolutely right. Is that if you think to yourself, "Wow, I had a really good day today. I did all this good stuff," and then your wife says, "Tim, what a horrible day you had today." I mean, but in all seriousness, you don't you? But that's what the media does to Trump. Is that to Trump,
Sure. Yeah.
to the American people, that you start to cast doubt because you're like, "Wow, I actually thought that policy was good, and I thought that what he was doing here was good, but wow." They're telling me he's such a bad guy, and it's this loop of trying to make you dislike what you think you actually like, and that's their way
Mm-hmm.
of doing it, because they didn't do it to Biden. They did the opposite to Biden, which is
Oh,
you'd
yeah.
walk down the street and say,
Helped
"God,
him.
this guy looks like he's out of touch and he's decrepit," and yet we're hearing that he's vibrant.
Yeah, it is exactly the opposite of what they did for Biden. And they've been doing it for Trump for a solid decade now. It was 2015 when he came down that escalator. And every single day since that day in 2015, 10 years ago, the media has gotten out of bed deciding, all right, what's the message today about how awful Donald Trump is? And that's what the Democrats have said. Every single morning for the last 10 years, their mission has been to tell people that Donald Trump is an evil person and anyone who supports him is also evil. And you should be ashamed to ever even think about voting for the guy. That's
Right.
what they have been doing for a solid decade. And what was the result of that, Sean? He was reelected in a convincing fashion, winning all 7 battleground states with a stronger mandate than he got the first time he was elected president. It has to be viewed in the scope of world history as the greatest failure of political communications that mankind has ever seen. Seriously, I'm not exaggerating.
No, I know, because it's
10
like
years of negative messaging against the guy, and the result was he won bigger than the time before. They failed. And they don't know that they failed, or they haven't given up the chase yet, because they're still doing it. These things that you're talking about, reporting negative news relentlessly, 92% negative news. They tried to do that when they were trying to prevent him from being elected the first time, the second time, and the third time. And they're still at it, Sean. That's why they put up, speaking of Kalen Dorr, I think this was his baby at the White House, the signs, the mugshot of 100 different violent criminal, illegal aliens who have been deported, putting their mugshots around the White House lawn so that they appear in the background of live shots that the network news people are doing. It's unavoidable to do it. MSNBC showed videotape and they actually fuzzed out the mugshots.
No. It gets better. All right, we jumped the shark here because
God.
I wanted to talk about some other stuff, but let's get into the media now. I was going to wait and bring this up, but I think this is perfect because I talked about how
fires
negative,
me up.
But it's not just them. I want to show you this clip of CNN and how they handled it. Very similar. Take a listen. Watch. This is Jake Tapper and how they handled, that scene walking into the White House where all of those mug shots were up of the individuals who they are deporting and all of the crimes that they are alleged to have committed. Take a look at how CNN handled this.
The Trump administration is approaching its first 100-day mark with a full court press on the issue of illegal immigration, and they really don't want you to miss it. So they subtly and tastefully deck the White House North Lawn with dozens of yard signs featuring photos of people that the Trump administration claims are in the country illegally, each poster saying arrested and listing the alleged offensive with which they have been charged. CNN's working to confirm the identities and if there are actual allegations against these people. Until then, we are blurring their identities.
Blurring their identities. They blurred out all the photos. By the way, you mentioned everything, but everywhere else had them. And the beautiful thing about this thing was, I showed the video earlier this week from my visit there, is that, that those were juxtaposed to where the media does all their live shots. So they couldn't miss it. But they are so they jumped the gun on everything else. But you heard Jake Tapper's language there. Alleged, allegations in this country illegal, alleged crimes. And he says dozens, trying to minimize it. There was 101, I think Kalen said, that they had streamed. You couldn't miss it, but they can't. It's a reflexive thing to say, okay, he says bad guy, we have to say good. It's like a Maryland man. He's a Maryland fan.
The Maryland man.
But the thing that's so fascinating is that it's reflexive. If you're for it, we're against it. And I'm surprised, to your point, at some point, just on a business level, they've not only credibility-wise cratered, but if you're running CNN or whatever, and you goes, guys, we're ratings just because if you can't make the millions that Jake Tapper makes if the advertisers stop advertising, the advertisers stop paying our advertising when the numbers go down. And so at some point, it's actually a business decision that you need to look at.
Yeah, and I mean that you're exactly right. It's the Democrats and the news media that there's an endless stream of 80-20 issues where they pick the 20 just because Donald Trump is on the other side. You're exactly right. It's reflexive. If this sounds like an old worn out analogy, but if Donald Trump said the sky was blue, the Democrats and the media would oppose him on it, simply because it is he who said it. It reminds me of the debate that Trump had with Kamala Harris back in 2024 in Philadelphia. I was there for that debate, of course. And on the stage, he made mention of the fact that Kamala Harris had vocally supported the use of taxpayer funds to pay for sex change operations for prison inmates and illegal aliens. Taxpayer money for sex change operations for illegal aliens and for prisoners. She supported that. Time magazine ran a fact check on it immediately after the debate. They published a fact check on it that said false. You know why? Because it sounded so crazy, and because Donald Trump had said it, it couldn't possibly be true. So they just rated it false without checking. Now, of course, there's a number of places where she was on the record having said that, including on videotape. It's irrefutable that she believed those things, and Time Magazine had to later issue a correction. But they actually fact-checked the guy because what he said didn't sound believable, so they just assumed it wasn't true because they couldn't possibly believe the crazy stuff about Kamala Harris or any other Democrat. It must be Trump making it up. And they didn't even check. This is Time Magazine. And so that's what you have over and over and over again. Donald Trump says something, we must oppose it regardless of how much sense it makes.
So it's funny. You bring up how silly this stuff is. And so I posted this thing the other day. I was down at the White House. Caroline Leavitt and her team, including Kaylin, were unbelievably gracious, invited me into this media row. And then I went down to this exclusive first-time briefing she had, right? So I post a picture on my X account, and I wrote this. Absolutely amazing how PressSec has expanded access to the White House. Tomorrow we commemorate POTUS, real Donald Trump, 100 days of his second term, and everything that has been done to fulfill the promises he made to the American people. But it's also worth noting how great Caroline Leavitt has done in the job and what she has accomplished. Okay. That's, yeah. That's frankly, it's opinion. That's okay. Paul Farhi, who was the media guy at the Washington Post, he has apparently taken a buyout, no longer there, but this is his long time. He fact checks me on that tweet. Okay.
You can't fact check an opinion.
Okay. But he does. And by the way, what have I said in any of that? She has expanded access. Okay. So this is his response.
Undeniable.
Fact check. Trump has expanded access primarily to Trump-friendly media. Okay. Gosh, let's see. Mike Allen of Axios was in that Punch Bowl was in there. Semaphore. Those aren't exactly Trump friendly. Okay. But again, because they don't want it to, they want to make it to disparage what Caroline's done. They make it seem like it's Trump friendly. And then he continues. He has cut off pool access to @AP and restricted it for Reuters and Bloomberg. No, he folded it in. So these guys my point is, I didn't mention the wires. I didn't talk about, and then he says he's also seeking to eliminate federal funding for public and international broadcasters and has sued CBS and other. So what does that have to do with anything that I said? But he calls that a fact check because again, we have to figure out and yet if you're listening, right, you go, oh, it's a fact check. So something Spicer said had to have been wrong, right? Because there's no way, like it's a fact check. And this just tells you how, this is them, that no matter what you say, you mentioned the blue sky that Donald Trump would say, and they'd say, no, it's not. It's like, whatever you say, they've got to be against. There's nothing I said that had anything to do with facts that are inappropriate or wrong. That was his reflexive answer.
I think you need to do a reread of the First Amendment, Sean, because right there, the founders put in there that the First Amendment protects the right of wire services to fly on Air Force One.
Yes.
Don't you?
Absolutely.
Don't you?
Yeah, that was. Oh yeah. That's I was Article 2, Section 4.
Yeah, it says. So what they have done is, like, the White House Correspondents Association believes that they own access to the machines of government. They absolutely believe that. And so when the Trump White House says, you know what, by having a designated seat on Air Force One, you've boxed out all these other organizations that never get, you know what, we're going to give some other people a chance.
It's mine.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he's attacking the First Amendment. Yeah. No, if you don't, man, he's actually spreading it around is what he's doing.
You know what's so funny? The way they approach this is if I don't get, it's like a child. If I don't get what I want, you're mean to me. And that's their thing. They're entitled. And it's like, I mean, seriously, it's their seat. They're entitled to it. Their brief.
Of course. Now, when the former media guy from the Washington Post points out, oh no, this is all Trump friendly media. Forget for a second that it's not all Trump friendly media, as you pointed out.
You mean forget the fact?
How about forget the fact? But how about in the briefing room, the front row of the briefing room, the people who get to ask the most questions the most frequently and the earliest and all that? Who are they? It's the legacy media.
The Washington Post.
The legacy. They are absolutely, unabashedly hostile to this president personally. They're not being adversarial. They're not asking the questions. They are being personally adversarial to this particular president, not to presidents generally, but to this one. You never could possibly acknowledge that if you're at the Washington Post. No way.
No. But you could not have teed up what I was going to ask you or show you next, because I've had some fun with this in the last couple of days since Terry Moran had that interview from ABC with President Trump on the 100th day mark. But he had this comment about Terry Moran's trying to talk to him about Pete Hegseth. And I want to play you what Trump responded, because it was like a masterclass in kicking someone's butt. So this is Terry Moran. He's the ABC guy. He's doing the interview and he wants to ask him about Pete Hegseth and his hand standing in the cabinet. Take a look.
A very good defense, hopefully a great defense secretary, but he'll be a very good defense secretary.
You have 100% confidence in Pete Hegseth?
I don't have 100% confidence in anything. Okay, anything. Do I have 100%? It's a stupid question. Look,
it's a pretty important position.
No. You don't have 100%. Only a liar would say I have 100% confidence. I don't have 100% confidence that we're going to finish this interview.
I don't have 100% confidence that we're going to end this interview. I mean, it's funny. Do you remember who was the pitcher? You would know this. Remember who was asked a question in a press conference, and he goes, "That's a clown question, bro."
Oh, that was Bryce Harper.
Was that Bryce Harper?
Not a pitcher, yeah. Bryce Harper said it when he was like 20 years old. Yeah, that's a clown question, bro.
Kristen Welker does this on Meet the Press all the time, where she goes, "Mr. Secretary or Congressman or whatever, can you guarantee to every American that's watching?" It's like, no one can guarantee that the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and yet you want people to answer these silly questions. And I love the way that Trump fights back. It's like, I don't have a guarantee that I'm going to finish this interview, and it's a dumb question.
Yeah, it is a dumb question. And what Donald Trump has been doing, and what he's taught everyone in politics how to handle a hostile interview, and most interviews that he does with anybody in the mainstream media are going to be hostile. Terry Moran, of course, would not going to go in there and ask him fair questions. Donald Trump has really shown everybody the playbook is that the first thing you do is just you refuse to accept the premise of the question. Because most of these questions are asked in bad faith.
Right.
They are assuming facts that are not, in fact, facts. And Terry Moran is not, or anyone like him from one of the legacy networks, they're not in there actually trying to elicit thoughtful responses. They're trying to win points. They're trying to score political points for their own crowd. It's a tribe mentality, a tribal mentality still. And, and I think Donald Trump has shown it. And I say she, I'm talking about Caroline Leavitt again, since we've mentioned her name a couple of times. She does it masterfully. I think you can see that she has a really great relationship, and she really channels Donald Trump when she's in there in the briefing room. And I think Caroline does a fantastic job. I got to work with her for a while at the end of the campaign in 2024. And I don't know if it mattered to anybody at the time, but I told Susie Wiles, I said, if Caroline Leavitt is a candidate for White House press secretary, boy, you should really name her. And she said, well, it's going to be the president's choice, of course. But I'm glad that he chose her, because she's doing a great job. Yeah. No offense to President Company, you were fantastic too, Sean.
Listen,
this is her moment, and she's doing great.
No. And as I've said, I think I'm hopefully a big enough person to recognize when somebody's doing a great job. And I've told her that. I've told the president that. I agree with your assessment. She's done a phenomenal job, and she deserves all of the credit for doing it. Before we go, Tim, there's something that caught my eye the other day that I think flies beneath the radar. And there's a lot of these Biden legacy policies that kind of affect so much of like what we do. And there's a thing that he had called like the pill penalty that's affecting our ability to, like, as we talk about people getting healthier or whatever. And so explain what you know about like what this is and how it's affecting our ability to get access to key drugs.
Yeah, the Biden pill penalty, it was something inserted into the poorly named Inflation Reduction Act back in 2021. And Biden was warned by just about everybody that this was going to happen. And what it does is it favors one kind of medicine over another kind. It favors what are called large molecule medicines. And think of things that you have to go to the hospital for, like injections or IVs or infusions. They're more inconvenient. They're more expensive. They drive up the cost of the entire healthcare system. He, for some reason, favored those over what are called small molecule medicines or pills. Like everyone thinks of medicine in pill form. That was what was discriminated against. And it punished innovation in pills. And it did exactly what everyone said. It drove 70% of the research and development dollars away from pill form medicine, which makes no sense because pills on average are 71% cheaper than other kinds of medicine, especially the injectable kind, that the medicines of last resort, really. And we're talking about now we're not having innovations in drugs that attack mental health problems or Alzheimer's disease. Cancer drugs are not being developed. The University of Chicago has found
all because of this reduction in inflation.
Oh, absolutely. The Biden pill penalty in there. And the University of Chicago has found that 188 new cures or applications for existing medicines have not been discovered because of the Biden pill penalty. And that translates into 116 million life years off of the life expectancies of Americans living today have vanished. 116 million life years off of everyone's lives. And so what will happen? Congress in budget reconciliation has a chance to get rid of the Biden pill penalty. And if they do, if and when they do, it will dawn a new era of the golden age of innovation in medicine. We're talking about new cures for Alzheimer's, for mental health, for cancer, for all kinds of other diseases. Prices will go down because this has killed the reduction in prices in pill form medicine. There's no reason for anyone to enter with a generic drug now. That the incentive to come in with generic drugs, which really drives the price down, that's gone. So if Congress gets rid of that, prices will continue to fall. New drugs will be developed. It'll be the golden age of innovation in medicine if they get rid of the Biden pill penalty. The president signed an EO that included something like that, included instructions to Secretary Kennedy to work with Congress on this. So I think it's probably going to happen. This is another one of these things that Biden left that's just a landmine, and Trump has to.
All right, so they're at least acknowledging it from the White House. They get it, and they're dealing with this.
Oh yeah, the president signed an EO, issued an EO last week about lowering prescription drug prices, and getting rid of the Biden pill penalty was part of it.
Okay. Tim, I want to thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
You too. Thanks as always, Sean. Good to see you.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.